Welcome to the Versions of Healing, the interview segment of the Healing Version podcast, a space created to uplift real stories from real people on their unique paths to healing. In each episode, we sit down with individuals from all walks of life, from survivors, overcomers, healers, and seekers, to talk about the experiences that shaped them and the steps they've taken towards wholeness. There's no single way to heal, and no story is too small. Whether the wounds come from trauma, grief, addiction, broken relationships, or self-doubt, this segment is here to hold space for every voice and every version of healing. These conversations are raw, powerful, and rooted in truth, because healing doesn't just happen in silence. It happens when we share, listen, and grow together. So come as you are, and let's explore the many versions of healing. Hey y'all, what's up? And welcome back to the Versions of Healing, the interview segment of the Healing Version podcast. I am your host, Deborah, and this is a space where we explore stories, tools, and truths that guides us towards wholeness. Today's guest is someone who truly embodies the spirit of inner transformation. Amy Vincze is a seasoned tapping coach with over 16 years of experience and the founder of the Soar with Tapping app. But what makes Amy's work so impactful isn't just her expertise, it's her story. Amy's journey through cancer, trauma, anxiety, and depression has become the catalyst for discovering EFT tapping. It is a powerful mind-body technique that helped her go beyond symptom relief and into the deeper work of healing emotional and energetic blocks. She's on a mission to help others access that same power, offering tapping as a practical science-backed tool that She's on a mission to help others access that same powerful offering tapping as a practical science-backed tool that anyone can use to release pain, reset patterns, and reconnect with themselves. If you've ever felt stuck in a cycle of suffering or been curious about alternative healing tools, this conversation is for you. So let's welcome Amy to Versions of Healing. Hi, Amy. How are you today? Thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. I am so excited about the conversation and to hear more about EFT tapping. So just get right into it. So can you describe yourself as a long life seeker and think back to the moment when curiosity about your human behavior first turned inward, where you started like knowing that healing was needed and when it became a personal journey for you?
Of course, yeah. So I think I've always been curious and a bit of a seeker about human behavior. Like it just always has fascinated me. And it was a curious thing for me to watch my own behavior and see how I reacted to certain things and then watch other people react totally differently. But when it came to a point when I felt like I really needed to do something about it was when I got diagnosed with breast cancer. I was 31 years old and I had zero, breast cancer history in my family. So it really came as an out of the blue diagnosis. I was not expecting it. And nobody in my family had ever had cancer, that sort of thing. So at that point, obviously after about a year of really scary kind of anxiety around the word cancer and what that meant for me in my life, I just started getting curious. And I wasn't asking why me in a way like, shaking my fist at God. I was really doing it in a way like, no, I'm really curious. What is it about me that would, bring up something like breast cancer? At the time, I was pretty miserable and pretty depressed in my life. I was single and hated it, and I wasn't really thriving in my career. And just, there was a lot of that critical voice was constantly kind of going at me. So when I look back on it now, it's really obvious that why I got breast cancer. I really feel like all of that negative messaging that I was giving myself and all the defeatist thinking, and it just, it piles up, and it created something in my body that thankfully was kind of a catalyst for change for me. So it got me to the point where I was really asking, what is it about me? What is it about my thought patterns, my fears, my lack of spirituality at the time, even my physical, what I was feeding my body and whether I was exercising or not. All of those things, I think, play into something like breast cancer. But I really, at that point, narrowed in on the emotional side, because I was a fairly healthy eater at the time, and I have spiritual beliefs. It wasn't something that I cultivated in myself, but it was the emotional stuff that I had neglected for a really long time. And I happened to go through a Tony Robbins program, and I met somebody there who introduced me to tapping. And once I experienced it for the first time, I recognized it as a really powerful tool right away. I had kind of limited success with it over the years, though. I got certified very soon thereafter. But I was, sometimes I would have a great session with my coach, and sometimes it would kind of fall flat, and I wasn't sure how and why. It didn't always feel as good as I knew it could. But it wasn't until about, I think it was 7 or 8, maybe even 8 years ago now, that I reached another kind of crisis point in my life where I was having anxiety attacks every day. I was in pain a lot, and I was about to get fired from my job. And I started just tapping intuitively on kind of things that were underneath the symptoms I was focusing on. So at the time I was focusing on, anxiety and big fears, but I kept asking myself, well, why am I afraid of this? What is it about this that feels so scary? Like my fears felt irrationally big compared to the situation that I was actually in. And so it just kind of, I just got clarity about where the fear came from. And it turns out that it came from childhood experiences and trauma that I had been through. And when I started focusing the tapping on those things and kind of telling myself, well, it's no wonder I have this fear, because I was only reacting to everything and everyone that was going on around me at the time. And, I didn't have all the information as a little kid. So I just assumed that it was my fault. And I assumed that there was something wrong with me. And so tapping through those things and kind of honoring and acknowledging it over and over again very quickly got me to the point where I was able to remove the lens of thinking that there was something wrong with me. I always had that belief. Mm-hmm. And it was like all of a sudden I was able to see that the sky was blue, because taking that lens off of my eyes really allowed me to see the truth. And it was at that point that I recognized the true power of tapping and being able to, and recognizing that in order to harness the true potential of it, you had to go down to the root cause, not just focus on the symptoms. And that was the point that kind of everything changed, and, quit my job and started working on an app and haven't turned back since.
Awesome. That's the goal. That's where I'm trying to get. I'm trying to quit my job and work for me. That is the goal. Yes. So for listeners who may be brand new to EFT, can you explain what tapping is and how it works?
Absolutely. I would love to. Tapping is a really great combination of three really strong modalities. The first one is energy medicine, which it's very similar to acupuncture in that it utilizes the 14 energy meridians found in Chinese medicine. But instead of using needles on the acupressure points, we use the percussion of tapping. And so in Chinese medicine, whenever you have a fear or a pain or something like that, that means there's a blockage in your energy system. And the percussion of tapping helps to break up that blockage and allow our energy to flow again, which is, if our energy is flowing, that means that our body can actually heal itself.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the energy therapy. There's also cognitive therapy aspect of it, because you are actively talking about what it is you want to release while you are tapping through the points. So if you're wanting to release feelings of hurt, you say over and over again, I felt so hurt by what that person did or what that person said. And it's no wonder. That was a really horrible thing to say, and you just keep acknowledging over and over again why you feel hurt. And you neutralize basically those feelings by kind of walking yourself through them cognitively. And then there is the somatic therapy element to it, because while you're tapping on your body, you can't help but gather your energy back from worrying about the past and gather your energy back from worrying about the future and bring it really centered into this present moment, where there more than likely is no threat to your safety or your person, and you can feel safe and calm and being in the present moment, which is another place where we are the most effective, most efficient versions of ourselves. So it's kind of a combination of those three things that make it so powerful. But what's happening on a scientific level, when we get stress of any kind, it doesn't matter what it is, what happens is that stress center in our brain, the amygdala, gets triggered and we go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode. And our body gets rushed with cortisol and we feel really anxious. 99% of the time, we don't know why. And we just have this anxious feeling, and it's either hard to get anything done, or we get really angry, or we run in the other direction. Something along those lines. So what tapping does in that moment is it is telling our amygdala to de-escalate. De-escalate, de-escalate. It's okay to feel safe and calm in this moment. Everything is actually fine. And it is removing cortisol from our bodies 43% faster than if you had done nothing else. So it is very actively taking us out of fight, flight, or freeze or fawn mode. And it's lowering blood pressure. It's lowering our heart rate. It is increasing our immune function and increasing our happiness levels. So it is very quickly and very powerfully doing all of that at once. And it is a very efficient way to heal from pain, heal from fears, trauma, anything. I have used tapping on everything and it helps.
That's good. I've heard of tapping, but I haven't done the research that I would like to do on it. But I'm really interested in doing it. I've been doing some, because I know you can do it on the chin, and I'm starting to try and do it. But I want to do a lot more research so that I'm doing it correctly. There is still some skepticism around alternative healing methods. How do you respond to people who question the vitality of tapping?
Well, at this point, there are over 300 peer review studies that have been done. They all show the efficacy of this tool. I'm not going to change everybody's mind about this, but I think educating people is the most powerful thing that I can do. And so far, science is proving that this is a really powerful tool. And my only question is, why not try it? I mean, there is literally no harm in trying it. You can't get it wrong. You might not do it. Let's say if you're tapping on the wrong spot, then it might not be as effective. If you're not honoring and acknowledging your feelings enough, it might not be as effective, but you can't hurt yourself in the process. So if there is a struggle happening, whether it's emotional or physical or otherwise, there's nothing saying that you can't just give it a shot. And I know it feels silly. It kind of looks silly. But once you feel the effects of it, which can happen really quickly, depending on, who you're working with and what you're working on, you will start to recognize that this is a really powerful and effective tool. And hopefully that experience alone would be enough to put people over the edge and trust that there is some validity to what everybody's saying.
Okay. Is there any methods or patterns that you can give to the listeners right now, like a simple tapping sequence that they can use to start out?
Oh, of course. The very first thing you should do when tapping is kind of be really specific about what you want to tap on. So we can just use, for an example, kind of general anxiety. If somebody is feeling generally anxious right now and they don't know why, they can just kind of rate their anxiety level from 0 to 10. 0 being nothing, I'm totally neutral, and 10 is I'm really anxious, about to have a panic attack sort of thing. So you rate where you are, 0 to 10, because this is how we gauge our progress. So say you're at a 9. Okay, so we've got our number. And then we start tapping on what's called the karate chop point, which is just down from the pinky finger on both hands. Some people tap on one hand on the side of their hand right there. I tap on both hands, tapping that spot together. And you say something called a setup phrase, which is something like, even though I feel really anxious right now and I don't even know why, I love and honor all my thoughts and feelings about this anyway. And then you say something like that 3 times. And then we move to what's called repeater phrases, going through the rest of the tapping points. So I'll point them out to the listeners right now. The first tapping point is at the beginning of our eyebrows, right there. So you tap on those spots. And this is an area that you want to be a little bit of a perfectionist, because if you're tapping in the middle of your forehead, not going to be nearly as effective as if you're tapping on the beginning of your eyebrows. The next one is on the side of your eye, right at your temple. I'll take my glasses off, but right at your temple. And then under your eye, right on top of your cheekbones. And then under your nose. Under your mouth. And then your collarbone point. If you find the beginning of your collarbones, you're going to go down about 1 inch. There's a little valley in between your collarbone and your ribs on either side of your sternum. And you tap in that spot right there. And then under your arms, for women, it's like right where your bra strap is, or for men, maybe 3 to 4 inches down from your armpit. And then you're going to tap on your ribs. For women, it's right below where our bra lands. And for men, it's maybe 2 to 3 inches down from the nipple. And then there's a wrist spot. There's 3 acupressure spots, one on the outside, middle, and outside. And so when I'm tapping my wrists together, I'm turning them to see if I can hit all 3 spots. And then
so when you're doing this, should you feel anything? Like, should there be...
Sometimes you can feel something. Sometimes one spot might be a little more tender than others. Sometimes it might feel really good to just stay at one spot for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to pay attention to that. You don't have to move through all of the points. You can just stay wherever your intuition is telling you to stay. You can't, like I said, can't get it wrong. But the last point is up on top of the head. And so as we're saying these repeater phrases, we're going to move through the points. So you would say something like, I feel so anxious right now. And I don't know why. I feel really unsafe for whatever reason, or for a million reasons. And I don't exactly know why. And we just keep kind of going through the points, honoring and acknowledging all of our feelings. How I feel irrationally unsafe right now. Nothing in my environment is proving to be a threat, but I still feel like I feel like something is dangerous or threatening to me. Maybe it has something to do with something that happened to me as a kid. Or maybe it has something to do with a trauma that I experienced. And maybe something in my environment caught the eye of my subconscious mind, and my subconscious mind decided it's not safe. And I just want to honor that at the deepest level. And we just keep going through all the points, honoring and acknowledging over and over again. And then when you're ready, you stop and you take another rating, 0 to 10. If you're still at a 9, or even your number went up, it could mean that there's something called a reversal where it doesn't feel safe to let this fear go. And in case you would do something different. But for the most part, everybody's number is going to come down. It's not going to go down to a 0 after, a couple tapping rounds. It might go down to like a 7. And then you keep tapping and you keep honoring, acknowledging all of the things that feel hard or uncomfortable. And when you get down to like a number 3 in your rating, then you can start infusing more positive comments, because that's the point where your body and your mind and especially your subconscious mind will start to believe it. So then you can say things like, but I'm actually not in a threatening environment. And it's okay to have all of my energy in this present moment, grounded in my body. I know that I'm safe, and it's okay to feel peaceful in this moment. It's okay to let this anxiety go and just stay present in my body. And so you just keep honoring and acknowledging that it's okay to let it go. And then you get yourself down to a 0, and that moment has been neutralized.
Okay. All right. I really wish this was a video and you guys could have seen it, but I feel like you did a very good job of explaining all the points, which takes me to the next thing, which probably would be very helpful to someone who's interested. So your Soar with Tapping app.
Yes.
So it supports people when creating a consistent healing practice. Like what is some of the things that we can explore in your app?
Well, I think there's over 160 different tapping scripts on the app. So hopefully there's something for everybody. There's 12 different categories, I think. But I think what makes my app different from other tapping apps that are out there is that I really wanted to help people get to the core or root of whatever it is that they're struggling with. So if they're struggling with depression or anxiety or procrastination or addiction or anything along those lines, there's going to be a video that tells you how the best way, the fastest way to use tapping to kind of neutralize those feelings. Because if you are feeling depressed for whatever reason, going and seeing 160 different tapping scripts feels really overwhelming. You don't really know where to start. So it really is meant to support people through some challenging moments and offer them kind of a hand to kind of lead them through the process. There's also a My Journey section where you can kind of journal your feelings about anything that comes up while tapping. You can schedule it into your day using like Outlook and the Google calendars. You can create goals for yourself and line up tapping scripts, because sometimes if you have time to do some tapping, it's hard to figure out what to tap on. And sometimes you forget what you wanted to work on before. And I've had that experience anyway. So this hopefully makes it really easy for people to engage with it. There's some shorter tapping scripts if you don't have a lot of time. And there are ones to help like put a Band-Aid on an issue if you don't have time to really address the core root cause of something. then you just put a Band-Aid on it so you can at least get through your day in one piece, right? We just want to make this as easy as possible for people. I think the hardest thing for people to kind of come to terms with about tapping is that we're consistently acknowledging the negative. I don't like to use the word negative because I don't think any emotions are negative. I think some are just more uncomfortable than others. But we do that because those feelings are there. We do that because we have denied or pushed down or, generally avoided feeling those uncomfortable feelings for a really long time. And engaging with them and moving through them in the safe space that tapping creates, because it's constantly telling that amygdala that it's okay to feel safe while you're expressing these emotions. The challenge for people is actually engaging with them and feeling like, because it's counterintuitive, right? You want to feel happy, but the truth is we need to move through the difficult and uncomfortable emotions, and then we find the happiness on the other side of that, through that. So I think that's the hardest thing for people to come to terms with. And once you kind of engage with it for a while and understand how much better you can feel on the other side of doing this work, then you'll really start to kind of strengthen an emotional muscle in yourself so that that whatever comes up, you are able to move through it and not kind of load it up and stuff it away in some part of your body that's going to come back and bite you in the butt later.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what would you say has surprised you the most in your work with clients over the years?
I think what surprised me the most is our lack of understanding around what is really happening in our bodies and our minds around our emotions, because we have never been given the tools to really understand it. I mean, our emotions, especially if they're the challenging ones, get judged so often. Like if you're a man, anything other than anger is considered a weakness. And if you're a woman, any kind of emotionality, you could get locked up for it. You're considered hysterical, at least, not in the very distant past. That was the case. And it's still be accused of, being on your period or whatever, like that we're constantly judged for having big emotions or even uncomfortable emotions, and anything other than like a happy, shiny, happy emotion is not viewed positively. But the truth is there are no wrong emotions. We just judge them as that because they don't feel great. And the truth is that they're there for a reason. Anger, for example, is a really powerful and really important emotion. It tells us when something is feeling really unfair. And that might kind of clue us to the fact that there's some trauma that we haven't dealt with in the past, but it also might clue us to the idea that, oh, this is a really important place for me to create boundaries in my life. So we need that kind of emotion in order to have it guide us to a place where we can be happy. So these are all important feelings, and I think we need to bring them back. We need to kind of allow them their time and their space, give them their day in court, and then we will all be better off for it. I think we're kind of on the verge of that. It feels like there's a little bit of an emotional revolution happening because more and more people like yourself are opening up conversations about healing and what that means. And I think our emotions are going to play a really big part in it because it's something that has been ignored for so long.
Absolutely. I agree. I'm
Mm-hmm.
so glad to see it. I'm happy to see that more people are opening up and wanting to talk about the root of the issues and the
Yeah.
childhood wounds that nobody wants to talk about because
Oh, I
we
know.
really didn't talk about them when we were younger. And you just got to be quiet. That's just how things are, and we don't
Ah,
talk about that. And so the fact that there's bravery and there's people who can like come out and be like, no, we're going to talk about it because that's why we're having these issues today, and
yeah.
anxiety and depression and our nervous system is all messed up because
Yeah.
we are bottling all these things in that needs to come out on the surface and be talked about so that we can heal, because you can't have true healing without truth. So
Yes. Yes. I
yes.
couldn't agree more. And I think one of the biggest things that clarity moments that I had too, I assumed that I didn't have any trauma in my life because it didn't look like a sexual assault or being physically abused by my parents or something really big. It didn't I wasn't
Mhm.
in a war event or something along those lines. I assumed that I didn't have trauma, and I judged myself for all of my what I thought were character defects.
Mhm.
But it wasn't until I understood there's big T trauma, like those big events like that, and there's also little T trauma. And sometimes little T trauma can be much harder and much more complex, and because you don't recognize it as such, and it can go on for years and years and
Mhm.
without knowing that it's there. And it could be something as simple as, if your parents had to work two jobs and you were alone a lot, that can be a trauma to a little kid. If you have an angry parent or an angry sibling, and so you felt like you had to walk on eggshells or be perfect all the time in order to avoid some really scary episode, that can be a complex trauma. And so it doesn't have to look one way. It just
Right.
has to create a fear and a disempowering belief about yourself and who you are, and what you can be in the world to really do a number on our emotional state.
Absolutely. And I feel like with the small T traumas, there's not a lot of support because it's overlooked. So nobody's looking to support you. Whereas if you have this big thing go on where maybe you lost both your parents as a child, you have support
Yeah.
groups and everybody's like, people can see you. But with those small T traumas, it goes overlooked. So
Yes.
definitely prolonged and traumatizing over a long period. Definitely.
Yeah, I didn't realize I had trauma until I was in my late 40s. I wish I had known it earlier, it would have saved me a lot of suffering, but we get there
Yeah.
when we get there, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like a divine time and when you're supposed to, because
Yes.
I feel like if it happens before the time, then you may not even take it as serious. It has to happen when you're actually going to latch on to it and be like, you know what, I do have trauma, I do have something I need to heal from.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it happens when it's supposed to. I believe anyway.
I
So
agree. I agree.
with healing, like how do you define true healing? Like what does it look like when someone finally begins to thrive after years of struggling, maybe like through tapping or whatever, healing method they use?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I really love and advocate for a comprehensive approach to healing. We are physical and spiritual and emotional and intellectual beings, and I feel like all of those areas need to be addressed in order for us to feel whole. I will say from my own experience, kind of coming into tapping, I was expecting tapping to fix me, to really heal all of these parts of myself that were wrong. And maybe even I put a label of bad on them. And I had zero compassion for those parts of myself and I hated them. And so I would kind of make a vow. I'm going to say make an internal vow that I'm not going to show anybody those parts and I'm not going to engage with those parts. And so I would, take big portions of who I am and I'd set it over there. I'd take another big portion and set it over there away from me as far as possible. And what that did was make me a shell of a person. I was like a big wedge of Swiss cheese, holes everywhere, not solid in who I am, no confidence in who I was. And what tapping did was it allowed me to bring back in anger, which I thought was a really bad emotion. And I always prided myself on being so easygoing. And I don't really ever get angry and, things like that. But when I finally saw the value in anger and I was able to kind of tap through my fear of anger about how destructive it can be and how scary it can be and kind of incorporate it back into who I am, I was able to kind of fill in all of those Swiss cheese holes and make myself solid again. That to me is healing. I did that in physical ways, and I did that in spiritual ways, bringing spirituality back into me, and all of these emotional elements that I had vowed I was never going to engage with. I'm bringing them back in one by one. I have so much more compassion for them and an understanding that that's when I am the most whole and the most confident, is when I have my shadows with me and my light with me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's good. That was good. So, what is one message or affirmation you'd like to leave our listeners with as they begin or continue through their healing journey?
I would say that determination is your best asset. If you're healing from something physically or emotionally, just don't give up. Don't ever give up. If tapping isn't working for you the way that you want it to, there's probably some refinements that you can make in how you're doing it, or maybe even work with a coach to begin with so that you get a really great understanding for how you need to focus your time and your emotions around it. And I would say that, just keep going. Keep going. There is no end in the healing journey ever. We heal in layers all of the time. You might, like, when I first released that first layer of feeling like there was something wrong with me, I really expanded who I was. But once I expanded into that space, all of a sudden I wanted more for myself. And that required me doing more work so that I could expand into even more space. And so it continues to happen like that. It always happens in layers. It's not that tapping actually didn't heal you. It did. It healed you to what life was requiring of you at that moment. And when you want more from your life and you expect more from your life, then you're going to have to do a little bit more healing in order to be able to expand into that space. And so it's just a never-ending process. There's no finish line here. We just keep going, and we keep learning, and we keep healing, and hopefully being a really great example of what is possible for other people too in that process.
Absolutely. Being an advocate and an avenue and that transparent being, and just keeping it real and raw. Because I feel like a lot of people are coming out because they have people to look at that's being real and that's being raw and that's relatable. Because when you
Yes.
look at people and they're like, oh, I got it all together and I don't, I can teach you how to heal. And it's like, you can't teach them how to heal. You can, you can tell them what happened with you and be an example.
Yeah.
And, then that's when people are like, you know what? I can do it. I'm like, yes, you can do it too. Like, I was messed up. I'm still messed up. I got stuff that I'm going through right now that I might talk about
Always.
next year,
Yes.
I'm not ready to talk about it right now.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you on an episode in 2026.
There you go. Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah. We're
Yes.
all in some at some point in our journey, but we are never at the finish line. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
everybody's got it too. Everybody has some form of trauma, some challenge, and we're all kind of in the same boat together, one day at a time.
One day at a time.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, I thank you so much for being here. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you, how they can get to your app, and all of that good information?
Absolutely. You can search for Soar with Tapping in the Google or Apple Play stores. You can go to my website at soarwithtaping.com/podcast-special, and will find a code there that you can input into the app to get 50% off of your first annual subscription. You can always email me, amy@soarwithtapping.com, or you can find me on any of the social medias. Soar with Tapping, I do a daily tapping round just to give people a little gift to get their day started. And yeah, I hope people kind of get on board with tapping because it's been so transformational for me and my clients. And I hope that they experience it too.
Yes, we're definitely going to have to get into tapping. This is our second Versions of Healing interview on tapping, believe it or not. So I believe in tapping. We're gonna tap in, everybody. We want to tap into tapping. Thank you again, Amy, for being here, and thank you guys for listening. I greatly appreciate it. And until next time, peace.